Ethan Cole had spent 6 months inside the royal palace of Vaelora and had already learned 3 useful things. First, never argue with a palace administrator carrying more than 2 data tablets. Second, never eat anything served in a bowl that was still moving. And third, when an armed royal guard said, "Human, do not touch that," touching it was generally considered a poor career decision. Unfortunately, there were no guards around when Ethan found the device. He was 40 meters beneath the western palace wing, kneeling beside an open plasma conduit while his diagnostic scanner complained in increasingly dramatic tones. The palace had been constructed over several thousand years, which meant its electrical systems were less a network and more an archaeological argument. "Voltage fluctuation again," Ethan muttered. His wrist terminal chirped. "Cause unknown." "Very helpful." Another chirp. "Recommendation, consult senior engineer." "I am the senior engineer." The terminal paused for a second. "Recommendation unavailable." Ethan stared at it. "Wonderful." He pushed himself upright and swept his scanner across the wall. Behind polished black stone, something was drawing power from the palace grid in slow pulses. That should have been impossible. According to the maintenance maps, nothing existed beyond that wall, except bedrock. Ethan ran his fingers across the surface. The stone shimmered. He froze. A section of wall dissolved into blue particles, revealing a narrow corridor descending into darkness. "Well," Ethan whispered, "that seems safe." Every intelligent instinct told him to report the discovery immediately. Every engineering instinct was already walking inside. Tiny lights awakened beneath his boots as he entered. The passage looked far older than the palace above it. Silver symbols covered the walls, twisting into geometric patterns his translator could not recognize. At the corridor's end stood a circular chamber. There was no furniture, no machinery, only a pedestal. Something rested on top of it. Ethan approached slowly. The object was smaller than his palm, shaped like 2 metallic rings folded around a dark, crystalline center. No seams were visible, no buttons, no obvious power source. His scanner produced a sharp error tone. "Unknown material." "Now you're interested," Ethan said. He reached toward it. The instant his fingertips touched the metal, the chamber came alive. Blue light exploded across the walls. Ethan stumbled backward. The device unfolded in his hand. Thin rings rotated around the crystal without touching one another, accelerating until symbols appeared in the air. Then a voice spoke. Not through his translator. Inside his head. "Neural pattern accepted." Ethan went perfectly still. "Nope." The ring stopped. He carefully placed the object back onto the pedestal. Nothing happened. He stepped away. Still nothing. "Excellent. We will both pretend this never happened." He turned toward the corridor. The device floated off the pedestal and followed him. Ethan stopped. It stopped. He moved left. It moved left. "Oh, come on." He grabbed it, shoved it inside his equipment bag, and decided that whatever ancient civilization had invented obedient floating artifacts clearly had a terrible sense of humor. Then the palace alarms began. Red light flooded the corridor. A mechanical voice thundered from hidden speakers. "Security breach. Lower archive." Ethan stared upward. Coincidence. His terminal beeped. Probability of coincidence, 0.003%. Nobody asked you. He ran. By the time Ethan emerged into the Western Maintenance Hall, armored guards were already pouring from both entrances. Their crimson combat suits reflected the emergency lights, and the long pulse rifles in their hands were definitely not standard tools for discussing workplace safety. "There!" someone shouted. Ethan raised both hands. "Before everyone becomes unreasonable." A pulse bolt struck the wall beside his head. Ethan abandoned diplomacy. He sprinted. Behind him came the thunder of armored boots. "Halt!" That suggestion would be more convincing without the shooting. He tore through the palace kitchens, scattering 3 cooks and something alive that had apparently been intended for dinner. He crossed a banquet hall where dozens of nobles stared as a human engineer rushed past carrying a tool bag. "My apologies." A guard crashed through a decorative screen behind him. "Still my apologies!" Ethan rounded another corner and nearly collided with a floating marble statue. He slapped it aside, sending the ancient emperor rotating slowly toward the ceiling. "Sorry, Your Majesty." The guards were closing in. His lungs burned. His terminal displayed a palace map across his wrist, but every escape route flashed red. Blocked, blocked, blocked. Then Ethan saw a black doorway at the end of the hall. No guards, no lock visible, only strange golden symbols surrounding the frame. His translator produced a warning: restricted royal area. Good enough. He reached the door. It opened before he touched it. Ethan threw himself through. The doors sealed behind him with a deep metallic boom. Silence. Absolute silence. Ethan bent forward, hands on his knees, trying to breathe. "Okay," he gasped. "That went badly." "No," said a calm female voice behind him. "I suspect it is about to become considerably worse." Ethan slowly straightened. Then he turned. A tall woman stood beside an enormous transparent window overlooking the glowing capital far below. She wore no crown, but she did not need one. Long black hair fell over her shoulders, framing a face Ethan had seen on every imperial broadcast in the system. Her long, elegant ears rose through her hair, and her silver eyes watched him with terrifying composure. Queen Vaelora. Ethan looked at her, then at the sealed door, then back at her. Outside, guards began pounding against it. Ethan swallowed. "Your Majesty." Vaelora tilted her head. "You have 10 seconds to explain why a human engineer has just broken into the one room in this palace where even generals require my permission to breathe." Ethan considered his options. Then the object inside his equipment bag began glowing bright blue. Vaelora's expression changed, and for the first time since Ethan had entered the room, the alien queen looked afraid. Vaelora's eyes remained fixed on Ethan's equipment bag. The pounding outside grew louder. "Your Majesty!" a voice called through the sealed doors. "Step away from the human!" Ethan glanced over his shoulder. "That sounds unnecessarily personal." Vaelora did not smile. "What are you carrying?" "Mostly tools." The blue glow intensified. "And apparently one very enthusiastic exception. Put the bag down." Ethan obeyed immediately. Whatever confidence had carried him through the palace vanished under the queen's stare. Vaelora moved closer, and Ethan finally understood why entire diplomatic delegations became nervous around her. She looked remarkably human at first glance, but the elegant length of her ears and faint silver patterns shimmering beneath the skin near her temples made that illusion impossible to maintain. Her long black hair fell freely down her back, unusual for a queen Ethan had only ever seen wearing ceremonial crowns. Another impact shook the doors. "Open this chamber," the guard commander demanded. Vaelora's gaze sharpened. "This door recognizes only my authority." "That is comforting." "It should not be. Someone is attempting to override it." Ethan looked toward the door. "That is significantly less comforting." Vaelora crouched beside the bag. "Open it." Ethan slowly unfastened the magnetic seal. The ether key rose by itself. Vaelora recoiled. The reaction was small, but Ethan noticed it. The metallic rings unfolded around the dark crystal, rotating silently. Blue symbols appeared between them, bathing the queen's face in cold light. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Vaelora whispered, "Impossible. That has been my professional diagnosis for most of today." Her eyes snapped toward him. "Where did you find this?" "Under the western wing, hidden corridor, strange chamber, pedestal, extremely poor warning signs." "You touched it?" "In my defense, I'm an engineer." "That is not a defense." "It usually isn't." Vaelora reached toward the device. Nothing happened. Her fingers passed between the floating rings, but the artifact remained dark and unresponsive. Then Ethan moved closer. Instantly, the crystal illuminated. Vaelora stared at him. Ethan stared at the device. I would like to formally distance myself from whatever that means. A violent metallic crack came from the entrance. Vaelora stood. Computer, seal the chamber. A soft artificial voice answered from the ceiling. Royal command acknowledged. Heavy armor plates descended across the doorway. Ethan blinked. You're locking them out? Yes. They're your guards? Yes. They were chasing me. I noticed. So we're friends now? Vaelora gave him a look capable of freezing plasma. Do not become ambitious. Outside, the commander shouted again. Your Majesty, the human has stolen a restricted Imperial artifact. Surrender him immediately. Vaelora walked toward the door. Commander Draven, who issued the arrest order? Silence followed. Ethan's expression changed. Draven finally answered. The order bears royal authorization. I asked who issued it. Another pause. Vaelora's long ears shifted slightly backward. Ethan had spent enough time around her species to recognize the gesture. Anger. Your Majesty, Draven said, please step away from him. Vaelora touched a control beside the door. Commander, if you attempt to enter this chamber without my permission, your next assignment will involve counting atmospheric processors on the northern moon. Ethan leaned closer. Is that bad? There are 4 million. Ah. The communication channel went silent. Vaelora turned back toward him. The humor vanished from Ethan's face when he saw her expression. That artifact disappeared 817 years ago, she said. Ethan looked at the floating object. What is it? The ether key. That sounds expensive. It started a civil war. That sounds more expensive. Vaelora approached the artifact cautiously. My ancestors believed it belonged to the first architects, a civilization that existed on this world before the foundation of the Empire. They built machines we still cannot reproduce. Ethan watched the rotating rings. And nobody knows what it does. We know what people believed it could do. Which was? Open something. Ethan waited. That's it? Vaelora's eyes narrowed. 8 centuries of scholars produced a slightly longer explanation. Good. I was worried. She ignored him and extended her hand again. The ether key remained motionless. Touch it, she ordered. Ethan hesitated, then placed 2 fingers against the outer ring. The chamber vanished, or appeared to. A holographic projection exploded outward, covering the walls, floor, and ceiling with thousands of stars. Ethan found himself standing inside a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy. Vaelora slowly turned. Ancient symbols streamed through the air. Then a single planet appeared between them. Her planet. A beam descended through its holographic surface and stopped beneath one location, the Royal Palace. Ethan's wrist terminal began translating coordinates. His stomach tightened. Whatever this opens, he said quietly, it's underneath us. Vaelora stared at the coordinates. No. Ethan looked at her. You recognize them? She did not answer immediately. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost its royal certainty. These coordinates lead beneath my private chamber. A low vibration passed through the floor. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Then something ancient, buried far below the palace, answered the ether key with a deep mechanical pulse. Once. Twice. The lights flickered. Ethan looked down. Please tell me your palace normally does that. Vaelora slowly reached for a weapon hidden beneath her robe. No. From beneath their feet came the unmistakable sound of enormous machinery beginning to move. Ethan sighed. I knew I should have become an accountant. The vibration beneath the chamber faded, but neither Ethan nor Vaelora moved. For several seconds, the only sound was the faint rotation of the ether key between them. Then Ethan looked at the floor. So, he said, how attached are you to this room? Vaelora's silver eyes remained fixed on the holographic coordinates. Very. That could become inconvenient. She ignored him and crossed toward the far side of the chamber. A gesture of her hand caused a section of the wall to become transparent, revealing layers of structural data beneath the palace. Ethan joined her. The display showed foundations, energy conduits, defensive systems, service tunnels, and old ceremonial chambers. Nothing existed beneath them, at least nothing according to the official plans. Ethan pointed at a blank region. There. Vaelora frowned. There is nothing there. Exactly. That is not how maps work. It is when someone has deliberately removed something. Vaelora turned toward him. You are certain? Ethan expanded the palace grid. Look at these power lines. They curve around this section instead of passing through it. Engineers hate doing that unless there's a reason. We're lazy creatures. Civilization depends on it. A faint smile touched Vaelora's mouth before disappearing. You joke frequently. I become unpleasant when frightened. You are frightened? Your guards are outside. An 8th-century-old machine is under my feet, and the queen of an alien empire is holding a hidden weapon while questioning me. Vaelora glanced at the weapon beneath her robe. You noticed. I noticed machinery and dangerous women. Both are useful survival skills. Her ears shifted slightly. Ethan wondered whether he had just insulted her, or complimented her. With Vaelora, the distinction seemed hazardous. The queen placed her palm against the wall. Archive access. Sub-level construction records. Earliest available. The palace intelligence responded. Records unavailable. Vaelora's expression hardened. Reason? Data removed by royal authority. When? 792 years ago. By whom? A pause. Authorization identity corrupted. Ethan whistled softly. That is extremely suspicious. Thank you, Engineer Cole. Your analytical contribution is invaluable. I sensed sarcasm. You are improving. The ether key suddenly rotated faster. A beam of blue light struck the floor. Symbols spread outward in concentric circles. Ethan crouched. These aren't coordinates anymore. Vaelora knelt beside him. What are they? He studied the shifting patterns. Instructions. For what? Ethan touched one symbol. The floor opened. Both of them jumped backward as a circular section of polished stone silently divided into 8 pieces and withdrew beneath the chamber. A platform waited below. Vaelora stared into the opening. I have lived in this room for 14 years and never noticed the secret elevator. There was no secret elevator. That is generally why they are called secret. She gave him a cold look. Yes, I regret protecting you already. Ethan grinned. The pounding at the main doors returned. Your Majesty, Commander Draven shouted. We have confirmed the human activated the artifact. Open the chamber immediately. Vaelora moved toward the doorway. I gave no authorization for his arrest. Your security codes were used. By whom? No answer. Ethan looked at her. That silence is getting repetitive. Vaelora's face became dangerously still. Draven, she said, you have served my family for 23 years. Yes, Your Majesty. Then you know precisely what happens to officers who misuse royal authority. Another pause. Please, open the door. Vaelora disconnected the channel. Ethan folded his arms. That sounded healthy. It sounded like betrayal. The humor drained from his face. You think he's involved? I think someone inside my palace wanted you captured before you could bring this device to me. Ethan looked toward the ether key. And now they know I did. Yes. Wonderful. Vaelora studied him. You did not know what you carried. No. You could surrender yourself. Ethan blinked. That sounded suspiciously like a test. It was. And? You failed elegantly. I have many talents. Vaelora stepped onto the hidden platform. Ethan did not move. She looked back. Coming. You have no idea where it goes. No. It could descend into a collapsed reactor. Yes. Ancient biological laboratory. Possible. Buried prison full of immortal monsters? Vaelora raised one eyebrow. You watch too many human films. That is not a denial. Another impact struck the sealed doors. The armor plating bent inward slightly. Vaelora extended her hand. Engineer. Ethan looked at the platform, then at the failing entrance. Fine. Secret ancient elevator wins. He stepped beside her. The ether key floated between them and settled above a circular slot in the platform. The moment it aligned, blue energy flowed through the floor. The elevator dropped. Ethan grabbed the railing. There was supposed to be a warning. Vaelora remained perfectly balanced. You are an engineer. That does not make gravity less rude. The platform descended through darkness. 10 meters, 50, 100. The palace vanished above them. Then the shaft widened. Lights began awakening far below, one after another, revealing structures of impossible scale buried beneath the capital. Metallic towers, suspended bridges, gigantic rings embedded in stone. A city beneath a city. Vaelora stepped closer to the edge. Her expression changed from suspicion to disbelief. My ancestors never built this. Ethan stared downward. How do you know? Because we still cannot build anything like it. The elevator slowed. At the bottom waited an enormous circular door covered in the same symbols as the ether key. The platform stopped. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ancient door opened. Cold air rushed outward. Inside, thousands of dormant lights illuminated simultaneously, and from somewhere deep within the complex, a synthetic voice spoke in flawless English. Human operator detected. Ethan went still. Vaelora slowly turned toward him. He swallowed. That, he whispered, is definitely new. Ethan stood frozen before the open doorway. The ancient voice echoed once more through the underground complex. Human operator detected. Vaelora's silver eyes shifted toward him. You said you had never been here. I haven't. The machine disagrees. I'm beginning to dislike how often machines do that. He stepped through the doorway cautiously. The chamber beyond was vast enough to swallow the throne hall above. Curved metallic walls disappeared into darkness, while thousands of thin lines of blue light awakened beneath the floor as Ethan walked. Vaelora followed. The lights ignored her. Ethan noticed. So that's not unsettling at all. Keep moving. That is exactly what people say before something eats the expedition. Vaelora's ears tilted slightly backward. Nothing is going to eat you. You sound very confident for someone who discovered this place 12 minutes ago. She gave him a look. Move. The passage opened into a circular hall filled with floating structures. Transparent geometric shapes rotated silently in the air, each containing flickering images that vanished whenever Vaelora approached. Ethan reached toward one. The object brightened. A hologram unfolded across the chamber. Stars appeared. Then ships. Hundreds of them. Vaelora stepped forward. The vessels were unfamiliar, long and silver, built around rotating rings. Ethan stared at their hull markings. English letters. His stomach tightened. No. Vaelora looked at him. You recognize them. I recognize the language. The projection changed. A planet appeared. Vaelora's world. Its continents looked different, but unmistakable. Then figures materialized beneath the image. Some possessed long ears. Others did not. Humans. Ethan forgot to breathe. Vaelora moved closer to the hologram. Ancient humans stood beside members of her species, repairing machines, exchanging tools, constructing enormous towers beneath an unfamiliar sky. This cannot be real, she whispered. Ethan swallowed. Either it's real, or someone built the most expensive practical joke in galactic history. Vaelora ignored him. My people recorded first contact with humanity 43 years ago. This footage looks thousands of years old. You are certain? The ship designs alone predate anything Earth currently uses. A new image appeared. A human woman placed her hand against a device identical to the ether key. Beside her stood a long-eared alien man. Together they activated a massive ring surrounding the planet. Vaelora's expression hardened. Someone erase this. Before Ethan could answer, a metallic sound came from the corridor behind them. Weapons charging. Vaelora spun. Commander Draven entered with 8 royal guards. Their rifles were raised. Ethan sighed. You people are incredibly persistent. Draven's armor was damaged from forcing his way through the palace, but his expression remained controlled. Step away from the archive. Vaelora moved in front of Ethan. You violated my private chamber. I protected the throne. You ignored a direct royal order. I protected the Empire. Vaelora's voice became colder. Those are not the same thing. Draven looked past her toward Ethan. The human must come with us. Ethan raised a hand. I vote against that. No one asked you. I'm noticing a pattern. Draven's gaze returned to Vaelora. The ether key cannot remain active. Why? Because some doors were sealed for a reason. Vaelora gestured toward the holographic humans. You knew. Draven said nothing. That silence answered everything. Vaelora's face changed. You knew our history was false. I knew the truth was dangerous. To whom? To everyone. Ethan stepped slightly closer. That sounds suspiciously convenient. Draven raised his rifle toward him. You understand nothing. Then explain it, preferably without shooting. The guard spread out. Vaelora reached beneath her robe. Draven noticed. Do not. The queen slowly withdrew her hand. Ethan glanced toward the floating archive. Symbols had begun appearing beside the hologram. He recognized their pattern. The system was responding to his presence. Quietly, he moved one finger across his wrist terminal. The ancient network accepted the connection instantly. A warning flashed. Defense protocol available. Ethan hesitated. Vaelora saw the movement. So did Draven. Stop him. Ethan tapped the command. The entire chamber went dark. Then red lights ignited. Something enormous moved inside the walls. Draven looked around. What did you do? Ethan backed toward Vaelora. I pressed a button. You are an engineer. We press buttons professionally. Sections of the floor opened. Metallic figures rose from below. Tall, faceless, 4 arms each. Ancient weapons unfolded from their shoulders. One robotic sentinel turned toward Ethan, then toward Draven, then toward Vaelora. A synthetic voice announced, Unauthorized biological entities detected. Ethan blinked. Wait, I'm authorized. Threat assessment commencing. That sounds less promising. The first energy blast struck the floor between Draven's soldiers. Everyone scattered. Vaelora grabbed Ethan by the arm and pulled him behind a column as another beam cut through the chamber. Draven shouted orders. The sentinels ignored them. A guard fired. 3 more machines awakened. Ethan peeked around the column. That was a poor decision. Vaelora drew her hidden weapon. You activated them. I did not realize the security system hated everyone equally. A blast shattered the column above them. Vaelora grabbed Ethan again. Run! They sprinted toward the far passage. Behind them, guards and ancient sentinels exchanged fire. Draven saw them escaping. Stop the queen! Vaelora glanced back. Her expression became murderous. He really should not have said that. Ethan kept running. Can we discuss his career choices later? The corridor ahead suddenly illuminated. The ether key flew from Ethan's bag and raced forward. A sealed door opened before it. Beyond waited another chamber. At its center stood 2 chairs. One shaped for a human, one shaped for Vaelora's species. Ethan stopped. Vaelora stopped beside him. The door slammed shut behind them. The battle outside became muffled. A holographic message appeared between the chairs. Ethan stared at the translated words. Vaelora read them over his shoulder. Joint genetic authorization required. Ethan looked at her. She looked at him. Then the ancient machine spoke. Human representative confirmed. A second light scanned Vaelora. Vaeloran representative confirmed. Locks began opening somewhere below. Ethan slowly exhaled. I have a feeling we just became a committee. Vaelora stared at the awakening machinery. A committee for what? The floor beneath them became transparent. Far below, something the size of a city began to power on. Ethan's humor disappeared. I think we're about to find out. The chamber seemed to breathe around them. Light moved beneath the transparent floor in enormous concentric patterns, spreading outward through machinery buried deeper than any structure Ethan had ever seen. The two chairs at the center rotated slowly toward one another. Vaelora did not sit. Neither did Ethan. That feels like a trap, he said. Vaelora studied the restraints built into the armrests. It looks like a trap. Excellent. Agreement already. We are becoming an effective committee. The ether key floated between the chairs and separated into two rings. One moved toward Ethan, the other toward Vaelora. A holographic sphere formed above them. The planet appeared first, then a storm of darkness beyond the system. Not clouds. Space itself seemed twisted. Ethan stepped closer. What is that? The machine answered. Gravitational rupture event. Recurrence cycle. 6,842 planetary years. Vaelora stared at the projection. Recurrence? The hologram changed. They saw ancient cities burning beneath the sky fractured by violet lightning. Oceans rose. Orbital stations collapsed. Then the image showed human ships arriving. Ethan's face tightened. The forgotten humans had not conquered Vaelora's ancestors. They had saved them. Massive ring-shaped generators were built around the planet. Their energy formed a shield against the rupture. Then something happened. The human fleet departed. The shield went dormant. The records ended. Vaelora whispered, "Why were we never told?" Because history is usually written by whoever survives long enough to edit it. A metallic crash sounded beyond the sealed door. Draven. Vaelora turned. He is coming. The machine spoke again. Defense lattice requires dual biological authorization. Ethan looked at the chairs. So we sit? Apparently. I preferred the part where we ran. They sat. The restraints snapped around their wrists. Ethan jerked. I officially withdraw my support for the chairs. Blue light entered his veins without pain. Across from him, silver patterns beneath Vaelora's skin began glowing. Their thoughts seemed to sharpen, not merge, but align. The machine recognized them together. Authorization incomplete. Vaelora frowned. Why? A new symbol appeared. Command architecture corrupted. Ethan leaned toward the console. Of course it is. You can repair it? Probably. Probably. I'm trying to sound humble. That is new. He smiled faintly. Then the door exploded inward. Draven entered through smoke. Only 3 guards remained with him. His rifle was aimed directly at Vaelora. Do not move. Ethan looked at the restraints. I appreciate instructions I can actually follow. Draven approached the console. Activate the lattice. Vaelora's voice was cold. You spent your life protecting a lie. I protected stability. You protected your order. Draven ignored her and turned toward Ethan. Finish the authorization. Ethan looked at the holographic controls. And if I refuse? The rifle shifted toward Vaelora. That would be unwise. Ethan's expression changed. He lowered his hands toward the console. Fine. Vaelora watched him. Draven smiled. Ethan began entering commands. Lines of code flowed across the holographic surface. The ancient system was unlike anything human engineering used, but beneath its alien architecture, Ethan recognized something familiar. Permissions, hierarchy, control. Draven wanted the defense lattice, so Ethan gave him one. A false one. While pretending to activate the weapon network, he quietly rerouted command authority through Vaelora's biometric signature. She noticed. Her silver eyes narrowed slightly. Ethan continued working. Draven leaned closer. How long? Ancient systems are temperamental. You have 30 seconds. Threatening the technician traditionally improves performance. Vaelora almost smiled. The console flashed. Administrative control transfer ready. Ethan deliberately frowned. Oh. Draven stepped closer. What? Nothing. What did you do? Possibly something clever. Draven grabbed him by the shoulder. Ethan slammed his palm onto the final command. The chamber erupted in blue light. Vaelora's restraints released. Draven's did not exist to protect him. A gravity field struck him sideways. He crashed into the floor. His guards raised their rifles. Vaelora moved faster. She tore the weapon from Draven's hand, rolled behind the chair, and fired twice. One guard fell, another fled. The third tried to shoot Ethan. A robotic arm emerged from the ceiling and slammed him into the wall. Ethan stared upward. I like this room again. Draven pushed himself up. You fool! You have given her control! Ethan stood. Yes. She will command every weapon on this planet. Vaelora aimed the rifle at him. No! Draven laughed bitterly. You expect me to believe that? Vaelora looked toward Ethan. Show him. Ethan touched the console. The hologram changed. The planetary defense lattice awakened. But targeting systems remained locked. The weapons could not fire inward, only outward, toward space. Draven stared. Ethan shrugged. The original builders designed it as a shield, not a throne. A new warning appeared. The gravitational rupture was approaching faster than predicted. Estimated arrival, 17 minutes. Vaelora read the numbers. Her expression hardened. Can we stop it? Ethan looked at the ancient network. Stop it. No. And survive it? He studied the damaged power channels. Maybe. Vaelora sighed. I am starting to hate that word. So am I. Far above them, dormant orbital structures began rising from beneath oceans, mountains, and hidden lunar vaults. Across the planet, people looked upward as ancient machines returned to the sky. Ethan stared at the countdown. 16 minutes. He looked at Vaelora. We need to repair the lattice before that reaches us. She lifted Draven's rifle. Then repair it. And you? Vaelora turned toward the corridor where more soldiers were approaching. I will make certain nobody interrupts the engineer. Ethan smiled. That is strangely reassuring. She glanced back. Do not become ambitious. Then the lights flickered. The planet trembled. And somewhere beyond the stars, space began to tear open. The countdown reached 12 minutes. Ethan stood before the ancient control lattice with both hands buried in streams of blue holographic code. Every damaged relay he repaired awakened another portion of the planetary network. Above them, icons representing orbital stations, buried generators, and lunar rings flickered from red to gold. There were still too many red ones. Vaelora remained near the shattered doorway, pulse rifle raised as distant footsteps echoed through the corridor. How bad? She asked. Ethan did not look away from the console. Would you prefer the comforting answer or the mathematically responsible one? The responsible one. We are in trouble. And the comforting answer? We are in very impressive trouble. Vaelora sighed. I regret asking. A deep vibration moved through the chamber. The holographic planet rotated above Ethan's head. Beyond it, the gravitational rupture had become visible as a black wound across space surrounded by violet arcs of energy. 10 minutes. Ethan traced the remaining failures. 3 power relays are refusing synchronization. Can you bypass them? I can bypass 2. And the third? He finally looked at her. The third requires manual authorization from both operators. Vaelora glanced toward the twin chairs. Again? I told you those chairs were evil. They returned to the center of the chamber. The ether key separated between them. One ring hovering over Ethan's hand, the other over Vaelora's. Joint authorization required, the machine announced. Vaelora placed her palm against the interface. Ethan did the same. The chamber disappeared around them. For an instant, Ethan saw through thousands of sensors at once. Oceans, cities, moons, millions of people looking toward the darkening sky. He felt the enormous scale of the network waiting for a command. Then he felt Vaelora beside him. Not physically. Her presence existed within the system like another current. Fear. Responsibility. Determination. Ethan realized that the queen he had once imagined as distant and untouchable was terrified. She simply refused to allow anyone else to carry that fear for her. "You can feel that?" she whispered. "Apparently. That is inconvenient. Extremely." He sensed amusement from her despite everything. The machine spoke. "Synchronization requires mutual authorization." Vaelora looked at him through the blue light. "I trust you, Ethan Cole." For once, Ethan had no joke ready. 6 months earlier, he had been an outsider who repaired machines, avoided politics, and believed survival usually meant staying unnoticed. Now an entire planet depended on him. He placed his hand fully into the field. "And I trust you." The ether key ignited. Across the system, ancient rings awakened. Huge structures unfolded from beneath the moons. Orbital platforms rotated into alignment. Energy flowed between them until a glowing lattice surrounded the planet. The rupture arrived. Space bent. The sky above every city turned violet. Then the storm struck. The underground chamber shook violently. Warning symbols flashed everywhere. Ethan gripped the console. "Shield integrity 71%, Vaelora shouted over the noise. "Is that enough?" "No! That was unusually clear." "Working on it." He saw the final problem. One lunar relay had failed completely, but the network could redistribute power if he sacrificed part of the palace grid. Ethan hesitated only a second. "Your Majesty?" "What?" "How emotionally attached are you to the Western Palace wing?" Vaelora stared at him. "Ethan, I need the power. Take it." He rerouted everything. Far above them, half the palace went dark. The shield surged. 78%. 86. 94. The gravitational storm crashed against the planetary barrier. Blue light covered the world. Then, silence. The warning symbols disappeared. The rupture passed beyond the planet and slowly collapsed into darkness. For several seconds, Ethan simply stared at the console. The machine spoke. "Planetary integrity stable." Ethan sat on the floor. Vaelora did the same beside him. "That," he said weakly, "was unpleasant." She laughed, not the careful smile of a queen, a genuine laugh. Hours later, Commander Draven and the remaining conspirators were arrested by guards still loyal to the throne. The ancient archives revealed generations of officials who had hidden the truth, fearing that knowledge of humanity's role in their civilization would weaken imperial authority. Vaelora did the opposite. She released everything. Within days, every citizen could access the records. Humans had walked their world thousands of years ago. They had saved it. And somewhere beyond known space, their descendants, or the answer to their disappearance, might still exist. Ethan expected his involvement to end with several uncomfortable interrogations. Instead, 3 days later, he stood again inside Vaelora's private chamber. The damaged door had been replaced. Vaelora sat near the window, reviewing reports. "You destroyed 12 palace systems," she said. "Temporarily disabled. You stole a restricted artifact. Borrowed. You activated ancient weapons. Defensive infrastructure. You interrupted a royal banquet. That one was definitely an accident." Vaelora lowered the tablet. "And you saved my world." Ethan folded his arms. "I was hoping that might appear somewhere near the top of the report." She slid a small insignia across the table. "Royal Engineer of Ancient Systems." Ethan stared at it. "With unrestricted access to the underground complex," Vaelora said. He picked it up. "And the palace?" "Yes." He glanced around the chamber. "This room too?" Vaelora's ears tilted slightly. "The authorization applies to machinery." "Of course." He walked toward the door. Ethan. He turned. The Queen looked toward the repaired entrance, then back at him. You already know where the door is. He smiled. Months later, the palace became the center of the largest archaeological project in imperial history. Human and Vaeloran scientists worked together beneath the capital, rebuilding ancient technology and searching the archives for clues about the vanished human civilization. Ethan stopped running from trouble. Mostly. And whenever palace guards saw him approaching a forbidden corridor with tools in his hands, they had learned a new rule of their own. Never ask the human engineer what he was doing. The answer was usually much more dangerous than the question.